ordinary people that are so deeply in love with Jesus that they can't help but go and talk about him.
Hey HomeGroups, this is week 7 of our study on evangelism. I guess it's been going on with speaking on Sunday as well as for the HomeGroups. I want you to know I'm Paul Meyer, my wife is Dolly. We've been coming to Aspire since August of 2018, and we became members more recently. The speaker I'm going to introduce you to, if you haven't heard of him, is Dr. Anthony Evans. He has what I think is a tremendous sermon on John chapter 4. You could glance at that, but he's currently the senior pastor at Oak Cliff Bible Church near Dallas, Texas, just south of Dallas. Wonderful speaker. He actually graduated from the same seminary I did, which is Dallas Seminary, obviously in Dallas, Texas. So he's going to look at John chapter 4. The Gospel of John in general is a very evangelistically inclined book. It's written so that you may believe. John 3 had to do with the evangelism in reference to Nicodemus, a very leadership sort of person in the Jewish nation. And chapter 4, Jesus is talking to kind of the opposite sort of person. Nicodemus was of the ruling class, a wealthy person, whereas this woman is called the woman at the well, or in some cases the bad Samaritan, because it's in Samaria. And John 4 introduces Jesus and his disciples traveling toward this and to this well near the Samaritan village of Sychar, and Jesus sends his disciples to go get food, and then he has this conversation with this woman who comes out about noon to get water. Of interest, it was usually early morning when the sun was not quite so hot that women came out to get water. This woman, because of her background, comes out about noon. I think she's trying to avoid people, and then she's obviously very surprised when she meets a Jewish rabbi and he asks her for a cup of water. So without further ado, I introduce you to this sermon. It's going to be the last 10 minutes of the sermon. I invite you to go to YouTube, or actually my Facebook page, and you can listen to the entire sermon. It's well worth it. So have a great time and get to your discussion questions, and God's blessings to you.
It thickens as we get to this last section. The woman says, verse 25, I know when Messiah comes, he's called the Christ. When he comes, he's going to make everything all right. Boy, doesn't that sound spiritual? When Jesus comes, everything's going to get better. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Jesus said, I who speak to you am he. Lady, I'm already here. I'm already here. You waiting for something that you don't have to wait for. By the way, let me explain something just in case you don't know this. Whatever race you are now will be the race you will be in heaven. Okay? So let me get that straight. Whatever race you are now will be the race you are in heaven. You are eternally black. You are eternally white. You are eternally Spanish, Indian. Whatever you are now will be what you are in heaven. You are intentionally, racially profiled by God. John says in Revelation chapter 5, verse 9, Revelation chapter 7, verse 9, he said, I looked up in heaven, and when I looked in heaven, I saw people from every nation, every tribe, every kindred, and every tongue. He says, I could see the differences among you. So whatever you are is what you will be. So stop putting that cream on your face. Stop staying out in the sun all day to become something different than you've been made. You have been made that way eternally. So, remember our disciples? Remember our disciples? Verse 27. At this point, the disciples came, and they were amazed that he had been speaking with a woman, yet no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why do you speak with her?" Now the disciples, they went to get the chicken. They come back, and they notice he's speaking with a woman. They're not surprised he's speaking with a female. They've seen Jesus speak to Martha. They've seen Jesus speak to Mary. They've seen Jesus speak to the Phoenician woman. They've seen Jesus speak to the woman with the issue of blood. They've seen Jesus speak to a lot of females. What's messing with them is he's speaking to a Samaritan female, which explains why he let them go into town to buy food. He could have never dealt with this woman with these racists hanging around. But neither did he let them stop him from doing what he was supposed to do. So just because all your posse isn't right doesn't mean you don't do what's right. Jesus did what's right, and he told them, "I'll catch up with you later." So they come, let me get through this. They come, and when they come, the woman runs into town, and she says, verse 29, "Come see a man who told me all the things I've done." So she goes to the city, and she goes to the men of the city in verse 28. So the men of the city are on their way out to check out this Jesus because of the cross-cultural, cross-racial witness of Jesus to this woman. The disciples in the meantime are saying, "Rabbi, eat," verse 31. Because we went all the way into town. It's about a 5-mile trip down, a 5-mile trip back. That's a 10-mile trip to bring Jesus some lunch because it's 12 o'clock noon. So they bring Jesus some lunch, and they say, "Okay, Rabbi, we got your lunch. Eat." Jesus says, "I have food to eat that you do not know about." Say, what? We done gone 10 miles, and you've already eaten? I can see Peter now. Who fed him? I cut off his ear because it's a 10-mile trip. You've already eaten. Disciples were asking, verse 33, who brought him something to eat? After we'd gone into town to buy food. And Jesus hits them with, here's the bottom line message, verse 34, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work." What fills me, satisfies me, is doing the Father's will, not satisfying your racist, socialist, culturalist agenda. And then he says in verse 35, "Don't say 4 months and then comes the harvest." He says, "Lift up your eyes and look on the fields. They're already white unto harvest." Stop putting it off. Don't say, "We're going to get around to this 4 months from now. We're going to get around to this later. We'll fix this later." He says, if you'll pay attention and look up, you'll see the fields are already ready. Now, when they looked up, what did they see? They saw all those Samaritan men coming across the field. So what did Jesus do? He set up an opportunity for them to relate to people of different races. He set up a scenario. And that scenario must always be set up by the body of Christ, who's to reflect Christ, where anybody can come through these doors who respect our faith in Jesus Christ. And regardless of history, background, race, or culture, they are welcome in the family of God fully. Because we have a standard. And I love how it closes. Verse 39, "From that city many of the Samaritans believed in him because of the word the woman who testified, 'He told me all the things I've done.' So when the Samaritans came to Jesus, they were asking him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days." Did you just hear that? Wait a minute. When we started, the woman is shocked he's willing to drink out of her cup. A couple of hours later, he hanging out on the weekend. He stayed with him 2 days. How do you go from people don't even drink from the same cup to a couple of hours later, why don't you stay with us for the weekend? Because when you do it God's way, it doesn't take that long. That's why. But now it's real easy in here. See, it's real easy in here because, yeah, we can all get along in here. But what happens when you go out and you have to face your own race? What happens when you go out when your biblical view is not the popular view? What happens when you're rejected for not being black enough, white enough, red enough, yellow enough, Spanish enough? When you have to take that stand responsibly, kindly, in love, but clearly. Because when a lot of folk hear messages on love and unity and all that, it's good inside the house. It's like the story of the Lone Ranger and Tonto. Lone Ranger and Tonto are going across the plains, and a group of Indians, they go to the northern ridge, and there's a group of Indians show up, and they're getting ready to attack the Lone Ranger. So Tonto says, Kemosabe, what we do now? So the Lone Ranger said, well, we got to go east. So they go east. Now there's a group of Indians on the eastern ridge. They get ready to attack the Lone Ranger and Tonto. So Tonto said, Kemosabe, what we do now? He said, we got to go west. They go west. When they go west, there's this long group of Indians on the western ridge getting ready to attack. So Kemosabe, what we do now? Tonto says, well, there's only one place we can go. We got to go south. So they go south. When they go south, there's a group of Indians on the southern ridge, and now they're being closed in 4 directions by the Indians. So now the Lone Ranger has a question. Lone Ranger said, Tonto, these your people. What we do now? Tonto said, what you mean we, paleface? See, folk jump ship when the going gets tough. But what God is looking for are some serious Christians on this issue who start biblically and spiritually and work it down racially, socially, and culturally. You do not start with your culture and work it up. You start with the word and the authority of your faith and work it in. May God help us to do our part locally, personally, in our families, and through our influence to bring people to a spiritual, biblical approach to the issue of race, culture, and class, so that at least we can model before the world biblical solutions to a society in chaos. Shall we stand?